With Anthem launching in just a few more days, we barely seem to know much about its story and lore at this point, with the most recent info we've got on the subject being at least a few weeks, if not even months old. Up until recently, Bioware has been quite secretive about even the most basic lore details, and fans have been dying to find out more about the world of Anthem and the ongoing conflict. We've got to see a glimpse of that through the demos, but if anything, that made things even more confusing, as we were pretty much thrown in the middle of it. Fortunately enough, thanks to a recent Games Radar interview about Anthem's story, lore, characters and factions, we've got to find out more details that we did not know of, and it looks like BioWare is keeping the high standards of storytelling with this game as well. So we're going to go over all of these details, but before that I want to remind everybody about the Anthem giveaway that is still underway. You can go ahead and take part in it by following the links down below, but in the meantime let's go over the subject at hand. Now, the story of Anthem begins in the Verdun region called Bastion, where Fort Tarsis is situated, but it is by no means the only human settlement. Up north of Bastion, in the mountains, lies Strollheim, the home of the Dominion, a very powerful militaristic society that for now will be our main enemy. Despite being on opposing fronts, freelancers and the Dominion have a very long history that predates the current conflict. This history, according to the article, begins in a time when humanity was under the thumb of a very powerful faction and people were basically used as tools. The name of this oppressing faction has yet to be revealed, and it's pretty much kept under tight secret, as BioWare is very careful about not giving out the main details. But what we know so far is that at some point humanity was able to rise up against these oppressors thanks to a woman called Helena Tarsis, who gathered all of the people under one banner, of course her banner, and the forces that were created as a result of this unification is what we know as to be called the Legion of Dawn. In fact, all of these events surrounding the Legion of Dawn occurred roughly 500 years before the beginning of the game. Back then, javelins didn't exist in the way they do in the present time, so the first models created to fight back were vastly different compared to the ones we have today. You might have even seen some scenes or depictions with early javelin models carrying swords in a very medieval kind of style instead of the massive firepower and advanced technology that the newest models have. These first models didn't exactly level up the playing field, implying that this oppressing faction was more advanced technologically than the humans, but it at least gave them a chance to fight back. Now here is where the things get a little bit more interesting. I was talking about the Dominion being a human faction and their history with the freelancers going back hundreds of years, and that is because the Dominion, according to the lead writer over at BioWare, are also heirs to the General Tarsis. It was after the death of General Tarsis that the Legion of Dawn split into three sub-factions. These are nowadays known as the Freelancers, the Sentinels, and of course the Dominion. All of them are tied to the history of the Legion of Dawn, but they aren't the only examples of humanity in Anthem's lore, so there might be more settlements or even civilizations up in the game. But now the question that is most probably on everybody's minds is how and why did this conflict even begin, and why are the Dominion the bad guys? Well, here is where the Anthem of Creation and the Shapers come into play. Most of you already know this by now, but these Shapers are essentially the equivalent of gods in the lore of Anthem, and the relics they have left behind are what they used to create the world of Anthem. Of course, they didn't completely finish it, and it is said that the world of Anthem is an unfinished planet. The most powerful of these Shaper artifacts is what is known as the Anthem of Creation, a technology with the capacity of two things: creation and destruction. It is unknown even by the people over in the world of Anthem which one came first. Was it the Shapers or was it the Anthem? But what is known is that the Anthem cannot be contained, and even the Shapers couldn't bend it completely to their will, which which roughly explains a bit about why the planet is said to be remaining unfinished. Some of these relics you might have seen when playing the demo or through various trailers. We know that these gigantic machines are sometimes half working, sometimes they are completely dead, and other times they come up to life causing all sorts of unforeseen events, mostly cataclysmic. That is why all of these factions are trying to work out the connection between these relics and the Anthem of Creation. In a sense, the Dominion does the same, except of course their motivation lies in trying to control these relics and destroying everything that opposes that. But I'll talk a bit about more of that stuff in the next section that brings us right at the start of the main story. Now the first thing I'm going to go over before going over this section is that this is going to contain some slight spoilers about the first mission that you'll get to play in the beginning of the game, so if you don't want to see that, you can skip this part using the timestamp I'll be providing in the description box as well as in the pinned post in the comment section. It's nothing major, so don't worry, it's more of a general overview, but I know there's some people sensible to this kind of stuff or people who want to keep things super fresh, so that is why I'm giving up this disclaimer. Nonetheless, at the start of the main story, our characters begin as recruits among freelancers, with the first mission also being very important, a very vital one in the history of Anthem. This event takes us to a site called the Heart of Rage, which I've talked about in the past, and it seems that somebody has been tampering with the Anthem of Creation in their efforts to control it. We don't really know who it is, it might be the Dominion doing it, or it might be somebody else. But with the Anthem of Creation being an uncontrollable force, the investigation proves to be a disaster and countless freelancers meet their doom on the battlefield. This gives birth to what the writer names a technological cataclysm that continues to eat the world around it and becomes bigger and bigger as the time goes by. Out of all of these characters, the Monitor, which is revealed to be a Dominion commander, feels that he has developed a way to control the Anthem of Creation, and if this proves successful, his faction will be pretty much unstoppable, and being an expansionist type of faction, this also means that everybody else is most probably going to be in danger. A key takeaway here is that the Monitor is not actually the leader of the Dominion, but rather the equivalent of a general or a field marshal, which means that there's potentially an even bigger threat behind him pulling the strings behind the curtains. In fact, there are other Monitors as well in the game, with hints being given that these seem to have an affinity towards the Anthem of Creation and might even get to learn how to control it. So it seems that these are basically humans with some special abilities, almost like the Ciphers, hearing the Anthem of Creation, understanding it, communicating with it, and knowing a little bit more about its powers. Nonetheless, the Monitor with the capital M is the one that the story is going to have a huge focus on, and he also has a huge amount of resources and troops at his command, which is why he's also such a hard target to deal with. He always seems to be one step ahead of the freelancers thanks to the amount of resources he has access to, and he's generally considered a major threat. Now, speaking of enemies and threats, obviously there are more than this out in the world. Besides the Shaper relics and the Dominion, the world is also packed with dangerous wildlife, sometimes even monstrous, and we get to deal with some of these at various points throughout the game. Then we also have the various beings, either the ones being born through the cataclysms or mutated by the Anthem of Creation. A couple of examples were given, and for example, the Ash Titans are elementals. They are born out of the cataclysms, but other beings exist there as well, especially the ones created by the Anthem of Creation or corrupted. For example, we have these chimeras, which are animals that existed in the world of Anthem, but they have been altered by Shaper events, and a couple of examples were given here as well, such as for example the Fire Scorpions or the Ice Wolves. You've probably seen a few Ice Wolves in the game throughout the demo. Then there is also the Scars, of which we seem to know very little outside of a few key details. They are a form of insect-like creatures, a product of this world, as the lead writer puts it, and on the surface they are relentless scavengers, swarming in like locusts and swooping everything up to turn it into their their tunnels and hives. They don't have a hierarchy, but rather function as a hive mind, and they do possess a form of intelligence, as it's obvious from the way they were able to build all of those structures as well as their own suits. But from all of the hints we've got, it looks like at some point we're going to make a huge discovery about them, most probably related to the main story or at least an important side arc. Still, according to the article, they are a threat because they are very difficult to deal with, and when you step on one scar, there's gonna be 10 more that pop up and take its place, so you can definitely see that happening in the game as well, with dozens of scar appearing at any given time. At the end of it, the article also goes into a lengthy explanation about the life inside of the fort, the connections and the relationships you're going to be making with the various characters in there, and how your choices will even influence some of the stuff that is happening over there. And there were a few examples given, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you want to have a longer read, you can go on the Games Radar website and check the latest Anthem interview. It's going to be there. Tell me what you guys think about this subject. Do you think the story is intriguing so far? Are you looking forward to find out more? Comment down below, and also a thumbs up and a subscribe would go a long way, and I will see you guys soon, so peace.